Mike Petrovelli. I'm the co-star market analyst for all of Arizona. Kind of setting the table here for our discussion using co-star data. This is our supply-demand vacancy chart here. Really, the gist of this is to kind of show the interaction between supply, demand, and vacancies. And what we see here is Phoenix continues a trend in the right direction. We saw last year demand, the blue bars up here, outpace the supply, the orange bar, for the 5th consecutive year in 2018. The vacancy rate, the black line, is near all-time historic lows for Phoenix, and well below the historical average, which is the green dotted line there. Kind of seen industrial, specifically logistics, kind of become the new retail, which was alluded to earlier in the earlier presentation. The rise of e-commerce really driving demand, along with really robust population growth and job growth. Let's see here, and manufacturing job growth has been about twice the national average here. This is actually the tightest segment of the market in Phoenix because we just haven't really built this type of space here this cycle. Most development has been concentrated in logistics. So in 2018, we get about 7.9 million square feet absorbed. We forecast about 6.2 million square feet absorbed. I know it looks like the forecast calls for demand to slightly fall behind supply, but what's really important is that demand is generally keeping pace with the rate of development here. This is presupposing that there are no future deliveries. Projected length of industrial supply based on what's currently available, about 35 million square feet, based on annual absorption numbers in 2018, about 7.9 million square feet. That will last about four and a half years roughly. Based on our forecast, however, this is from 2019 to 2023. We're expecting about 5.24 million square feet to be absorbed on average. The projected length of supply is about 6.7 years. And then next, looking at the average industrial rent, last year grew in Phoenix about 4.9%. That's an uptick from 2017 when rents grew about 4.4%. Last year's gains still trailed the national average, which is really a big number, about 6%. Nevertheless, it's still a healthy number for Phoenix, well above the historical average, and a slight discount on the national average rent. Average rent here is about 7.94. National average is about $8.37. And this kind of gives us a little 3D map of where construction is concentrated within the metro area. We had about 5.6 million square feet under construction. Last time we pulled this data on January 10th, there's been a slight uptick to 6.1 million. And development is pretty spread out throughout the valley. Of course, the Southwest Valley continues to see cluster projects. The biggest project underway is actually Orbital ATK's advanced manufacturing facility in Chandler. And next up here we have sales volume and pricing, which set record highs in 2018. Nearly $2.3 billion worth of assets traded across nearly 1,000 transactions. The average price per square foot exceeded $97 square foot, and this is the first time it's reached that mark in more than a decade. And that's it. I'll leave it to the panel.
I guess we're up. That means us. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Camarina. I'm the market leader for CBRE for Arizona. We appreciate you being here today. And as we kick things off today to talk about the industrial market, before I do really quick introductions of the panel, I just relocated back from San Diego after 17 years, coming back home to Arizona. And for a lot of the reasons that have been discussed today, it is great to be back in Phoenix. There's a lot for us to candidly be thankful for here. And I think that really leads to a lot of optimism on a go-forward basis. So we're really optimistic about things going forward. And so today we're going to talk a bit about what does that mean for the industrial market today and over the next few years. So again, we appreciate you being here. Joined by Steve Larson from JLL, Megan Creasy-Herman from Prologis, Don McWilliam from Colliers, and Chris Tosi from Cushman & Wakefield, all of whom are very, very active in different elements and aspects of the industrial market throughout the valley. So we look forward to having a great discussion today. We're really going to look at the market through kind of three lenses and the convergence of the three. That's really candidly quite simple: supply, demand, and capital. So with that, we've got a little overview of the industrial market from CoStar, so thank you. But why don't I kick it off with Megan, talking a little bit about, from a supply standpoint, talk about supply today, and then give us a sense for how does it differ from the last few years or previous cycles from a design, layout, etc., usability standpoint.
Sure. I think at a high level, I'd say probably the top three aspects of buildings that have changed most drastically, let's say in the last 10 years since the downturn, really power. Number one, I would say, today's users, they're utilizing more and more power. So we're speccing more power into our shells. And I'd say we're not just speccing more power into our shell buildings, we're also building for expansion. And I think that's key from a development perspective is to make sure you're sleeving for additional power as we see more automation in warehouses, as well as the growth of additive manufacturing. I'd say parking, with e-commerce and the surge we see in the e-commerce parking needs at the holidays, parking and even trailer drops are becoming more crucial on the development side. It's very tempting from our perspective to max out on coverage when we can, but I think being mindful with regards to parking and trailer storage is imperative. And I'd say on the clear height, we all know buildings are getting taller. Looking back at Phoenix pre-crash, in our big box space, the handful of big boxes that were constructed prior to, let's say, 2009, clear heights were typically 32 to 36 foot clear. And today, the standards on clear height, I would tell you, are, I'd say 30 to 32 foot clear for 300,000 feet or less. I'd say 36 foot clear for 300 to 500, 550,000 feet. And then for our big boxes above 550, it's 40 foot clear now. It's the standard here in our market. So those are three of the aspects that have changed the most in the last 10 years on the design perspective.
When you dig down deeper into, from a geographic perspective, looking at perhaps the West Valley or the Southeast Valley, where each of you spend a lot of time respectively, are you seeing differences in each of those markets based on the users that are floating around in those markets? Does geography play a role in that?
Yeah, for the bulk side, again, thanks, I'm Don McWilliam. I've been out in the West Valley for 32 years, and when you start looking at the users that are really kind of concentrated in the West Valley, it's the big box bulk distribution users, but it's also the guys that are looking for the less expensive opportunities or alternatives that are out there. But as we're all seeing right now, the cost of the TIs and the cost of new construction right now is kind of driving a lot of the rents where there's a lot of parity on where guys are locating, but the big box users and all the major industrial users are focused typically on the West Valley for sure.
Oh, not major industrial users. We're spread out across the valley here. I'm Steve Larson. I focus mainly in the airport Southeast Valley, but conversely to what Don's talking about, we don't have a ton of big box distribution. That's just not the market that we serve. The location from here to the port, or from the Southeast Valley to the ports, is just not as desirable. But we have a very good labor, so ours is more of a story of labor demographics. ASU being the #1 innovation school over the last 4 years, we're really pulling a very large, highly educated workforce out of there. So as Matt had said earlier, Overlay TK just made a nice investment. We've had a big investment from Intel, different groups like that. Boeing's bringing people in from Seattle. So it's been very good from that perspective. And to echo what Megan was saying, the infrastructure that we're putting into these buildings nowadays far exceed what we were doing 10 years ago. From a power and clear height, just all around perspective, we need to be focused on a heavier employment base, at least in the Southeast Valley from that perspective.
And the airport as well, too.
Correct.
Absolutely. We're seeing, parking requirements increase, just like we've seen on the office side, right? We went from, 5 per 1,000, what's acceptable, to now 6 per 1,000, 7 per 1,000 that we're building for on the office side. These days, it's not uncommon to see a 2 per 1,000 on an industrial use for the
And
manufacturer.
sometimes even beyond that.
Yeah.
So
And the fit up for the West Valley for the bulk guys is 3 to 5% tops. I mean, you may see
Or 15 to 20.
you may 15 to 20 in the Southeast Valley. So we're even though the TIs are up, the difference may be there may be some air conditioning that's kind of going on in the fit-ups. There may be different dock packages because you've got the bulk suppliers that may need the load levelers in every door, whereas the flex users may have more grade level type loading. So I mean, this is all generic stuff that we live on a daily basis. But West Valley, we're really seeing that bulk guy really have the door packages that may be $15,000 a door, whereas in Southeast Valley it may be $3,000.
Yeah.
I mean, at the most, something like that.
And really what we're building for is flexibility. So we want to be able to accommodate all different types of users, understanding could it be 10% office and be more of a last mile alternative, or are we really looking for something that's going to be a really heavy deployment? We need to be able to accommodate for both. So that's really what we're seeing the development move towards in the Southeast Valley.
So as the new product is coming out of the ground, it's got different features, it's got different characteristics than perhaps we had in previous cycles. And demand is changing in terms of things that the users are wanting. How does that impact the existing stock? And is there a sense that there's some percentage of the 300 plus million feet that's in the market is functionally obsolete? And how are owners dealing with that in the markets that you guys work?
I would say absolutely. We are coming to functional obsolescence with a lot of things, but those are so highly desirable from a location perspective that it's hard to walk in and talk redevelopment today, because if it doesn't make sense for a typical tenant, it will for an owner user, somebody that can come in and own it and really make it their own. So we can't bring a Megan or somebody like that in to say, hey, let's buy these 3 buildings, knock them down, and build this state-of-the-art distribution facility. The values are just too high because of the locations, especially with the airport Tempe markets and anything along the I-10 corridor. It just has become very difficult. So people are making do with what they can, but all the brand new stock has all the bells and whistles, and we kind of see the flight to quality from that perspective.
The theory of a shoe for every foot, I mean, it's out there. I mean, one of the things that we've been touting from an industrial standpoint that we're really seeing in today's world is the older, less functional spaces are getting drawn in by the new spaces on a price per square foot basis. So in other words, if you had a new building that's coming out at 43 cents and you had the older product that maybe had a little functional obsolescence in it that may have started at 26, 27, 28, they're now getting pulled up into the mid-30s. So you're starting to see
For now.
But it is but when you start seeing the spaces that, and I say this in like the 40 to 100,000 square foot spaces, those may have no trailer stores. They may have 150 and 120 foot truck courts, where the new ones have 185 foot truck courts and trailer storage. Those spaces are still in demand, because if they're going to have above 20 foot clear height, if they're going to have a decent sprinkler system, the industrial users are still wanting those spaces and they're willing to pay for them. But most of those spaces have some other features to them, like lower taxes. They may be in an older or a lower tax district that allows them to have 11 cent or 10 cent expenses, where some of the new product may have 13 or 14 cent a month expenses.
Okay. So sticking along the vein of supply, what does the pipeline, there were some stats here, but I would love kind of your real-time feedback in terms of what does the supply look like over the next 18 months, and what percentage would you characterize as kind of pre-commitments?
I would say, anecdotally looking at the pipeline today versus where we were pre-crash, let's say, I think development has been relatively restrained in Phoenix. I think we can all agree that there's been a restraint on the capital side that's been admirable and necessary in a market like Phoenix. And it's been good to see us get this late cycle, and we've got 6 million feet under construction that's been consistently 30 to 40% pre-leased over the last 3 or 4 years. So I think that feels good. I will say, looking West Valley on the big box product, we've now got 2 million feet in 2 buildings available, a 900 and then a 1.1 million footer out west. You've got 3 more buildings in the 300 to 550,000 foot range that have just delivered or will deliver here in the next 6 months. So you've got 3 million feet of spec product coming online here. And I think the next 12 months are going to be really telling as to how those lease up and where those rates are. I think it's going to be interesting.
One of the things I would say, Chris Tosi was looking at the thing, and is that I always marvel at the industrial developers that seem to exercise more self-restraint than the office developers. In the last cycle, we saw some really big 12, 15 million square feet of supply deliveries. One of the things that you can count on for Phoenix is that we oftentimes oversupply, but we sell them under demand. So we're much more in check. I mean, in terms of supply and demand, 6 to 7 million square feet of deliveries and also absorption. But last time we saw demand early, kind of in 03, 04, that led to this construction boom, and then it was a classic whipsaw in Phoenix, which is we oversupplied, they jerked the rug out, and we saw vacancies rise. So it's really refreshing to see the industrial developers continue to exercise that self-restraint.
Well, even to that, sorry.
It's hard. It's really hard though when you start seeing, like in 2017, where we had a record year in the West Valley, where we were over 5 million of net absorption in the West Valley, where everybody said, wow, look at all the single-tenant, big-box distribution users that are out there, which is the darling of the institutions. I mean, the cap rates were down at 5%, or now even pushing a little bit, we're pushing a little bit lower. And so everybody said, well, wait a minute, I've got to get in. So the size difference has changed right now because everybody's looking at Southern California and they're seeing 20 million square feet of net absorption on an annual basis the last 3 years, and they're going, wow, but there's no supply over there. And so we started building a little bigger products. So we've got an 800, we've got a 900, we've got a couple 650s that have happened, and they've been leased. So that has been a classic. I mean, if you look at if you want to say tempered approach for what's happened, everybody after 17 again started building, and so we've had this new boom out there again, and I've seen it 5 times. I mean, I've just seen it out there 5 times in the 30 years that I've been out there, and everybody comes in. And they all build at once, and then it takes a while for the absorption to happen because we just don't have, we're not leasing 4 or 5 consistently 600 to 1 million square foot buildings out on the west side of town, which is the bulk area for everybody right now every year. It's coming, but I think
We did it last year.
We did 17.
But I
17 was good.
think Chris brought up a good point, which is, if you go back to 2006, 2007, and you look at who was doing deals, which sectors were leasing industrial space pre-crash. I did it recently, we went back and took a look to compare, and 60 to 70% of leases getting signed back then were directly related to construction, right? We all know that anecdotally. That's the reason we've been a high beta market and we've been robust. And so thinking back to, wow, when you had 60 to 70% of tenants were directly related to construction, why were we surprised that we had the outcome that we did when our economy was so heavily dependent on construction? And comparing that today, you look at what I'd say has been the diversification and really the maturation of the overall Phoenix economy that we've experienced. Today, those deals that are getting done that are directly related to construction, it only makes up 25 to 30% of the sectors that are doing deals here in Phoenix. So I think from a demand side, we also feel, much more confident in the demand that, sectors that are taking up space.
I think what else is driving that is liquidity. I mean, investors are basically, there's such a herd mentality in this business that the institutional investors that include real estate investment trusts,
think it's a very compelling story, and I think we continue to grow momentum as a state.
And time to market in California
Oh,
is just
yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what, 3 years for an entitlement process? I mean, it can
9
be,
months.
especially for a manufacturer that's looking. I mean, for instance, Ball Container, just did a Ball Corporation, just did a huge build-to-suit out in the West Valley. And they were getting ready to go to Mexico. They looked very strongly going into California, but it's going to take.
They can't get that power either.
They
They
could get the
power
power.
that.
So they chose up the PB 303 and did a great deal. Now they've done their second building up there. So that's really driving a lot of those folks out of California. We've talked to GPAC and we talk to them pretty regularly. Well, California is our best marketing tool. So
Yes, it is.
sorry to say that, Paul. I'll take it back here, but
Aside from the weather from May 15th to September 15th.
I think the last mile is going to be a big thing across the board, both on the east and the west side, as we're starting to grow as a population. You're going to see these strategically placed 50 to 150,000 square foot distribution centers to service these groups. And I mean, I don't know the stats on the west side, but on the east side, you can reach 4.4 million people in 60 minutes. I mean, that's a pretty compelling story, especially when you're talking about the veteran communities out there. So I think it's going to continue to be that way as we go 5 million, 6 million people in Phoenix.
Well, I mean, speaking about East Valley and West Valley, I think you've got to talk about the impact of Loop 202. That's going to be completed here at the end of the year. So, $2.2 billion infrastructure project that personally, I think it's really going to have a large impact on the West Valley. We can argue the points of West Valley versus East Valley, but 65%. Well, no, 65% of people who live in the West Valley commute east to go to work every day. So when you think about the skilled labor that's typically located in the East Valley, which is why you see a lot of that manufacturing happening in the East Valley, opening up that stretch and creating a more direct route from East to West Valley, I think is going to be a major
We're just
win.
going to take more people over there.
We'll see.
well, I think
Stick with your forklift drivers.
that Loop 202 has been in discussion for a long time. It's going to be finished by the end of next year. And there's also a reliever that's going to attach to the 303 that's going to come across and join to that as well, which is going to relieve that mess that goes on I-10 right now. Because in the afternoons and in the mornings, I mean, it's brutal. But I think that's all going to change, and it's going to change in our careers. I mean, with all the relieving and everything that's going on in that 202, as Megan was saying, I mean, you look it up and down there, the speed to market for the distribution companies that have to be close to a freeway. Every mile they go off the freeway, it charges that company more money to be distributing that product. So with our new loop structures right now that we've got, which is almost completed, we're going to have a lot of those strategically located facilities that we're talking about and others are talking about along that loop. Going to really make a difference. It really makes a difference for the cost of doing business in the valley as well.
And I would say too, I mean, I think the opening of that 202 along the 59th Avenue corridor really cements what we've seen happen in the West Valley from a geographic shift over the last 7 years, which is 99th Avenue 10, 15 years ago used to be the end of town, right? And now I would argue that from 99th Avenue to east to call 43rd Avenue, that's now infill Southwest Valley. As development has continued to push far west to some markets like Goodyear. So I think having that 202 really shifts the geographic center of the West Valley.
Yep. Going to kind of the capital markets, we talked a lot about development yields. Existing product, there doesn't seem to be a ton that has traded in this market. Obviously, Prologis just made a big acquisition in the West Valley. But talk about kind of the supply demand on the capital market side of the industrial market going forward.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at capital allocators and aggregators and how the acquisitions now compare to pre-global financial crisis. So before the financial crisis, you saw a lot of kind of individual asset trades or portfolio trades by names that we know, LDA, Liberty Property Trust, Principal, kind of all the different institutions. The last time that I heard of Blackstone was in right before the Great Recession. They made a huge acquisition of equity office on a portfolio. Well, guess what? We talk about private equity. Blackstone is back, and you know what? If rather than buy an individual player for an NFL franchise, why don't you buy the whole team? So what they're doing is they're buying entities Prologis' acquisition of DCT Industrial Trust for $8.4 billion. Most recently, Blackstone purchased Gramercy Property Trust for $6 billion. Those trades occurred last year. Our transaction volume, Paul, was actually up here about 25%, so we did about $2.3 billion in industrial trades, but there's clearly this dichotomy of, you know, why not just buy the whole team instead of individual franchise players? If you can do it, right, they can do it, because everybody, there's an Amazon halo effect, there's a Blackstone halo effect, investors just, they're all in with Blackstone. So we're seeing these trends and they're driving yields down. As Don was pointing out, we're seeing yields, traded in earlier in January, an Amazon deal, sub 5 for, that halo effect. And so you're definitely seeing pressure on cap rates, and the larger the entity, and it's not just the Blackstones of the world. It's, you've got the Chinese that are coming in, the Asians. You've got AXA, which is kind of Swedish.
Singapore Investment Fund.
Yes, Singapore Investment Fund. So it's really it's a bigger game, and the challenge in industrial previously was just making 1 and 2 $20 and $30 million bets was tough to get and grow a portfolio. So let's just make $6 and $8 billion bets and buy entire platforms, and then we've got a footprint immediately. So,
And I think the lack of available opportunities here are also driving capital here. And I mean, in comparison, a 5 1/4 cap here is cheap in comparison to the sub 4s that you potentially find in the IE or something like that. So moving 5-6 hours to the east to pick up quality product, you're seeing the people that are willing to pay a little bit more, but they're still getting that big yield, bigger margin.
Well, and that's what we consistently see. I mean, this is not dissimilar from what we've seen previously with Phoenix recovered later in the cycle. We've got more room to run here. We've got more yield for those people that, don't find a sub-4 cap in Southern California attractive. So I think that's something we're going to continue to see is for the next, I know we're going to make predictions at the end, but for the foreseeable future,
Well,
absolutely.
look at the vacancy rates in some of in all the West Coast markets right now. When you look at Seattle, for instance, it's sub 2%. When you look at San Francisco, sub 1%. I mean, and so they're doing redevelopments in inner city right now that are penciling out right now. Look at Central Valley. I mean, that's probably 3.5%. And IE, 2.5 maybe at the end of the day for IE West. I would say Vegas and Phoenix mirror each other a little bit more closely. I mean, so we saw our vacancy rate drop a little bit below 7% until we had a couple of deliveries here last year that added another couple million square feet, kicked us back up to 7.5%. But I think if you look at the West Coast in general, I mean, everybody's looking for the next pocket. Where do we have some room to run? Where do our prices have room to run right now? And I think Phoenix still has that. I think we still have a long way to go for the pricing.
So from an opportunity perspective, all the conversation is East Valley and the West Valley. If you're an investor today, is that where you absolutely want to be? What are the markets that are showing signs of kind of optimism and growth throughout the valley that people just aren't talking about?
Well, those two obviously get a lot of attention just simply because they have the square footage.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
112 to 120 million square feet. I mean, we're pretty bifurcated from that standpoint, but I think you're going to see a lot of surprise. I think that the workforce up there, I think the North Valley, you're going to see a little bit more activity up there. They're just smaller submarkets, so they're not going to capture as much attention as you are with the Southwest or the Southeast. But I think you're going to see, I mean, my prediction, and I'll go early, is redevelopment, because you're going to see a lot of this functionally obsolete stuff that it's going to get a lot of attention along the 35th Avenue, 43rd Avenue, and downtown Tempe and airport area. You're going to see a lot of attention, a lot of money going there.
Well, let's not, and again, we've talked about two sides of the market. We haven't talked about the airport.
We haven't talked about airport
We
yet.
haven't talked about up in Deer Valley. I mean, there's a lot of people making a lot of money up in Deer Valley right now. I mean, prices are back. Prices are back in Deer Valley, and there's been a lot of commitment, a lot of big capital commitments. Extra, I know Bachman is doing a lot of work up there. There's a lot of big capital. It's more your smaller guys that are working up in that area, but there's people making money up in those areas. So when you start talking about the health of everything, yeah, we've got two big markets because we've got the numbers, but the airport's still doing well. We're still doing deals in the upper 50s, low 60s. I mean, I think even your new project over there is even going to demand more money over in that airport market as well. It has to.
Absolutely.
But again, that's redevelopment, if
Yep,
you think about
it
it.
is.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's core, it's info.
Correct.
And that's where you're going to continue to see it. And I think when you talk about the strength of the airport, what we talked about a little bit earlier as far as the are local tenants, people that are distributing locally and last mile. So the strength of that, our market when it comes to users in the 40 to 100,000 foot range, which is really the bread and butter of the Phoenix market, those have remained very strong in Phoenix, and they will, specifically the airport, absolutely.
Before we open up to questions, I got one more question for you, Chris, and that is, as stuff is out in the market for sale on the industrial side, how are investors underwriting the next couple of years? I mean, are they, this panel, and I think most people are very optimistic and bullish on the industrial market, are you seeing the same thing in the underwriting from a rental growth standpoint, and then from kind of how are they looking at the exits?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in Elliot, I think I just came in the tail end of Elliot's presentation, but I think he said, 7th or 8th inning. I think we're mid-cycle. I think we're 4th or 5th inning, candidly. A lot of people have been waiting for the end of the abyss, waiting for us to fall. Trailing 12-month job growth through November, 86,800 folks. So we're still very strong. We're seeing rent growth. Investors are underwriting rent growth for industrial. And I'll tell you, I think we're going to have vacancies at the end of 19 in the mid to low 6s. I know you said there was a little bit of supply drift that crept vacancy rates up, but I think what we're going to see is, I think Phoenix is still, for those that believe in Phoenix, there are some investors that have PTSD from the Great Recession, but those that believe, but the contrarians that see the opportunity, they're going long on Phoenix. They understand all the reasons that this panel has demonstrated. You're seeing rent growth. And on the exit, look, we're 110, 112, 115 bucks a square foot for industrial. I mean, stuff that we were selling pre-recession now is vacant, and then 4 square feet at 66 bucks a foot, in West Side Business Park. But on some of the smaller stuff, the more bread and butter, mid-bay, general industrial, 20 to 50,000 square foot users, that stuff is, Exeter and Colony they push north into the 115, 120, which is unheard of. Up in Deer Valley.
But they're setting the trend now. So anytime you see these come available, that's essentially what the market looks like, and you can get there.
Yeah, but so how about $300 a square foot for industrial in Oakland? Or inland. So how does 120 look in Phoenix?
Pretty good.
Just takes courage, all right?
Okay, before we get to our predictions, we have about 6 minutes left. Open it up to questions from the audience. I think there's a mic floating around somewhere.
Any thoughts on Pinal County?
Thoughts on Pinal County?
I think it's actually up and coming. You've had a lot of recent announcements that are going to drive Pinal County and Casa Grande into a little bit more of a labor market with Lucid and really the growth of the autonomous vehicles. You're going to see quite a bit of activity down through that area as we're starting to expand through the Southeast Valley and down the I-10 corridor. I think it's going to be a very, very active market. I think I'm not going to go as far as to say spec quite yet, but I think we're going to see more users that are going to be able to justify that kind of thing.
Can you expand on why you think Surprise is an up-and-coming industrial market?
A lot of it has to do with the demographics that are up there. You have they mirror very similar to what the workforce looks like in the Southeast Valley, and to what Megan said, a lot of those people are coming into the Southeast Valley just due to the users that are out there. So I think you're going to see more and more manufacturing type operations, the Balcors, different groups like that up along the 303 that are going to demand more of those higher tech employment, the higher tech employment base. So that's really what we're seeing.
You may see some rail that comes into that, utilizing the rail that's up there right now, because we really don't have a lot of rail locations on the infill. You've got some things out in Buckeye working right now, but if you like work up in that area right through there, you look at the rail that's going to be in Surprise, and then you look at the Northern Parkway, the new parkway that's come through there. It's phenomenal. I don't know if you guys have ever driven. Take a ride around the 303, number one. Okay, just start from I-10 and go to I-17. Okay, it's phenomenal what's changed up through there. And look at the parkways that they're now starting to build off of those right now, because it's changing. It's going to change the demographics. When I look back and I look at the maps 30 years ago, where Main and Main was 43rd Avenue and I-10, to Megan's point earlier, as things keep going west, migration now is going west at 75th Avenue, and it's going to 99th Avenue to be Main and Main for the West Valley. I think you're going to start seeing some of that with the inexpensive land up in that area right there, and some of the rail spots, the manufacturing capabilities, and the availability of land in that area is going to drive a little bit up there. That's surprising. I agree with you.
Okay.
The land that was purchased by Microsoft, which is huge in the Southwest Valley,
Is that affecting the optimism in the industrial?
Yeah, let me speak to that.
Just real quick, so
All right, you
the
start
question
first.
was, what impact did the Microsoft purchase on the land in the West
In
Valley?
Goodyear, yeah, that's in Goodyear.
Yeah, there was a 260 acre parcel that traded out there for $425 a foot. I mean, that's big numbers.
Raw, $425 a foot.
Raw, unimproved, okay? One of the things that's really going on in Goodyear right now is you're seeing a high-tech feed that's coming into the Goodyear area right now, where a lot of the data centers are coming that way. It used to be in the Southeast Valley, but the way the power companies are working right now, and Arizona Public Services said, hey, we're going to supply a lot of data centers to the West Valley right now. Goodyear is landed up, and you're going to hear a lot more announcements. There's already been the Microsoft closing. There was another closing. Advantage. There's two other big ones that are going to happen right now, and another one that's already in escrow right now. And you're going to see some major players shift to the Goodyear market right now. They're going to be these data centers. We call it industrial. It's a different kind of industrial. I'm not going to reinvent myself. I'm in the middle of one of the deals right now that'll probably be announced in another couple of weeks. But I think that corridor right now is raising the prices up there. But we can't sustain the pricing yet for the industrial with the kind of prices that the data centers are paying right now.
So I think that sector is here to stay.
Oh, it is.
Well, yeah, it is.
It's
I mean,
going to-
specifically to answer your question, yes. I mean, those data center groups tend to cluster, so that will drive more data center interest in that corridor. And when you look at the dark fiber that's available down I-10, you look at the fiber in Bullard Avenue, you look at the power that's available with the new APS substation that's going to be constructed there on Bullard Avenue. It checks all the boxes. And then when you back out at a macro level, one of the reasons we are seeing so much data center activity here in the broader Phoenix market, we've got, as I said earlier, we've got available, dependable, affordable power, and then we've also got the personal property tax abatement as a state for those data centers. So you're going to continue to see data centers locating and expanding here in Arizona.
That no natural disaster.
Exactly.
So,
That's exactly right.
Well, from what I'm hearing, and this is all from the experts in that industry, 2021, Phoenix will be the largest power distributor for the data centers in the world.
Yeah.
In the world. That's a big number. I mean, that's a big statement.
Is that your bold prediction? Or is
No.
that?
That's just one of the predictions, but that's just one.
That's somebody else's. That's
We've got 1 minute left, so I'd like to finish with a bold prediction. Remember, no one's going to come back to you 2 years from now and say you were wrong.
Yes, they will.
Give us. Steve doesn't count.
All right, I already gave you three. I'm going to say vacancy 6.5%, absorption 7 million square feet. I think cap rates, you're going to see continued compression. And I think in the next, we're going to have a little bit of a downturn. I don't know when that is. Elliot can speak to that. When we come out, we're going to have inflected growth again. We've had this steady demand, but it's going to be inflected, hockey stick. And so that's maybe 24 months away. Because the observers are saying they're looking to see what Phoenix is going to do. Our fundamental drivers are strong, so you're going to see big growth.
Okay, done.
I agree with Elliot. I think we're in the 7th inning, somewhere in there in the 9-inning game. But I think we're going to see prices on distribution buildings, and I'm talking big box